really enjoyed it, and he asked me if I wanted to sort of host the night with him, as it were. It wasn't big money, it was just good fun on a Wednesday night, and that was my first experience playing to an audience in a club.
How old were you then?
15. I had a little bum fluff moustache, and I was quite tall for my age, so I managed to get in as an 18-year-old, luckily, but there you go. And yeah, I just kind of, got the bug then and there, and the next gig that came along was on a Friday night. It was sort of Southampton's first rave night at a club called Peggy Sue's. Which has changed.
It's not there anymore, no?
It's still there, but I think it's called Burbank's. It might no. What am I talking about? It's called Junk now, which ironically is now run by Simon, the guy I did the first night with. Yeah. What am I talking about? Yeah, on a recent trip to Southampton, discovered that, and it's still in existence. So that was my first real taste of a rave night. After that was on a Friday night. After that, I got offered a residency in Salisbury at a club called Concord. I mean, you got to remember, this is sort of like 90s, 91, and the rave scene is still very much exploding. So these Thursday night clubs were rammed, 300-400 people every week. It was brilliant. And then Saturday was another night that I was a resident at a club called Remix in Bournemouth, which is still going on Holdenhurst Road.
What sort of stuff are you playing in these, like acid houses?
Yeah, back then it was, God, I remember sort of playing stuff like Steve Silk Hurley, Jack Your Body, like, early Chicago house, mixing it up with some acid, and then the breakbeat era came along, and a lot of the sort of Belgian new beat sound and all the early 91, 92 Euro stuff was really smashing the dance floor. So it was a real mix-up, really.
And when it gets to sort of 92, 93, obviously that's when kind of things started to take a bit of a split, and some people went with the jungle route, some people went with hardcore. Why did you stick with hardcore? What for you kind of
I always
made you take that route?
Always enjoyed like the energy on the dance floor, really. It was always, quite powerful music. I mean, when I listen back to the tunes, I used to think, oh, that's hard, Back then they sound really, really mellow compared to today's hardcore, but I just loved the energy that it delivered on the floor, and I found it really exciting. So don't get me wrong, I still love the breakbeat stuff, but I think around 92, 93 when it split, drum and bass sort of broke away and became really dark as well. People like sort of Ratty and Groove Rider and SS were all playing really, really dark tunes. And being my next big gig there, my next residency was Kinetic, which obviously a lot of people know me from, and we would have a big spread of DJs come, and I always found that the more banging gear really rocked the dance floor up there, whereas the sort of the darker stuff really sort of zoned them out a bit. Don't get me wrong, the DJs, they did some great sets there and stuff, but I steered away from the darker stuff because I thought it was a little bit too moody, especially for my, what I like myself.
Yeah, well, I suppose the idea for people going out is to have fun and kind of not always dark music.
Yeah, and it was all quite sinister and creepy, and I thought best suited for like a horror theme tune or something.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Kinetic, because back where we come from, obviously up and that way, Kinetic was a very big thing. A lot of the people I started out in this industry with were sort of ex-Kinetic ravers, and obviously Held Yourself and Demands, Stu Allen, the likes of. Paul's gesticulating at me there, so I have to edit that out. But obviously, they hold yourselves in very high esteem. And do you think that's the club that really kind of broke you as a DJ?
I mean, a lot of people know it because it was like a bit of a raving mecca, like a weekly sort of haunt for everything hardcore back in the day. I mean, everyone loved the venue, the Leisure Bowl, which sadly is. I think it's been knocked down now and turned into flats. The last time I went up there, it reverted to being Jolly's nightclub, which is like a sort of stand-up comedy.
Because they did Time and Space there. When I first started out, there were still things happening. I was too young to go.
Time and Space was the club they moved to, which was in what's it called?
Stanton Long.
Under Lyme. It's just down.
Oh, Newcastle Under Lyme.
Newcastle Under Lyme. Thank you. There's a club there called Time and Space, which hosted the Kinetic, a few months or a number of months after the closure of the Leisure Bowl in '96. That was a sad day, really. But I was there from sort of '92 to '96, 4 years of weekly travel up and down the
weekly, every week,
every Friday. Yeah,
and it was always full, apparently.
No, it wasn't always full, but certainly more full than not on most weeks.
It would depend. Could that happen now, do you think? Anybody could run a hardcore night and
no,
get it?
Definitely not. I mean, I think it's become a lot harder these days. You need the right lineup, you need to market it properly, you need to have a strong brand identity. I mean, if you take a look at the two big players out there really doing the biggest events, which are pretty much Slamming and HGID these days, the whole marketing machine is huge, whereas back in the day people would go to the promotion for Kinetic was minimal in comparison. And you really didn't need to do that much back then because everyone was so excited about it. They loved the venue, and as long as the lineup was right, they'd come out and play. You know.
Well, I suppose that's part and parcel of the internet, because obviously it's a lot easier for people to market their music and their nights and stuff.
Yeah, no internet back then, so you know, which is a double-edged sword really, because on one hand it's great for promoting things and making the music more accessible, but on the other hand, you lose a lot of sales to downloads, which is a bit of a bitch.
Well, recently you've actually started your MP3 store, one of the first, excuse me, one of the first major labels to start selling your stuff from your own site. I mean, I know Quash have been doing it for a while, but obviously the likes of Raver Baby and Essential Platinum that don't sell their own music from their sites.
Yeah.
How have you found that's been going? Have the sales been what you expected, or?
Well, I mean, we knew there would probably be an initial surge because we've sort of made available, if you count all our hardcore labels and Stimulant, there's over 400 tracks, which all became available literally, you know, kind of almost overnight, and subsequently there's a huge surge in downloads, which we expected. But in terms of individual track performance, I think internet downloads, I think most people who do actually put their music out there digitally would sort of like have the same comments as me, which is if only the hype generated as many sales as was possible. I mean, to say it's disappointing was probably a little unfair, but I would like to see more internet sales, because obviously a lot of people have been crying out for it, and I always read on forums, oh, you know, this label and that label should put their product on there, but when they do, they don't sort of sell as many as you would hope, given the amount of people shouting for it, because I think invariably, once it's in the digital domain, you only need to go on a torrent site and there it is, for free. And
do you think that's just a generation thing, just because obviously the kids have grown up with Kazaa?
I think, I mean, I know, you know, old fogies like me have had to sort of grow up and learn how to use the internet themselves and stumble their way around, but I think there's a whole new generation of kids who know how to get music from the offset, and for them it's a free commodity that they don't have to pay for. I mean, I know a lot of my friends and their kids, you know, they've got MP3 players full of free music, and it seems to be the norm attitude-wise for them to think, well, you know, music.
I suppose like copying.
What do you mean pay for it?
For our generation, sort of thing, I suppose.
Yeah, which, like I said, it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand it does expose the artists and the DJs and the music, but on the other hand it takes away money, especially from artists. Like, we've got a responsibility to a number of artists who rely solely on music production. Yeah. And, you know, when their sales statements are ever diminishing, it's difficult to sort of say to them, you know, keep your chin up, son.
Yeah. Keep sending us music.
Yeah, you hang in there. Don't worry about paying the bills.
So where do you see the future for hardcore going now? Obviously, there's kids in their bedrooms now with software that enables them to kind of make relatively good music without spending very much on a studio at all. I mean, I suppose you go back to when you guys started out 15, 20 years ago.
Well,